everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am really excited to have another guest here today. This is Shaylee, and thank you, Shaylee, for being on my channel. She has had quite a journey with trying to get pregnant and some different obstacles along the way, I guess you would say, and so she's going to share some of that with you. I do want to give a trigger warning here at the beginning that this is going to be talking about miscarriage. So if that is something that is triggering for you and this video is just not right for you at this time, that is completely fine. Feel free to pass by it. We're going to get started, and again, just like thanks for being willing to share. You've been on this pregnancy journey for a while, so I guess kind of take us back to the beginning where it all started and yeah.
Okay. About 3 years ago this fall, my husband and I decided we were ready to start our family. So, yeah, I got off birth control and we started trying. It wasn't anything super serious at first. We were kind of just waiting for it to happen, and it didn't, and my cycles were very irregular. So I went and saw my doctor, and they kind of told me to give it a year, give it some time. So yeah, I kind of expected things to happen within the first year, and it just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So had your periods always been irregular? Was that like normal for you?
They were not during my first few years when I was in high school and stuff like that. They were pretty regular.
Okay.
I traveled for a bit, and they started to get a little bit irregular, but I just kind of blamed that on traveling and all the changes. But yeah.
Okay. So what did they end up doing to help you like get back regular again?
They did give me a medicine that induces your period, to try to get things going, but it never really lasted or worked for super long.
Okay. So you would take the medicine and then get off of it, and then it would like be irregular again?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yes. So.
That's really frustrating.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So when you like first started dreaming about like your family, how did you kind of like imagine it would go? Like what's been your dream? I think a lot of girls like dream about their family from a young age.
I always dreamed of having a family and of having kids. I was always the girl that was babysitting on the weekends, and my job right now is a nanny. I never finished college because it was my dream to have a family and stay home with them. So I just imagined trying for a baby and getting pregnant and starting my family and quitting my job, and that's not what it's looked like.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, and you said it's been 3 years now, right? Okay.
Yes.
So I know in that 3 years you have had a positive pregnancy test, so tell us a little bit about like your reaction to that and like how, whatever you want to share about that.
Yeah. A year ago, so about 2 years into our journey of trying to get pregnant, we got our first positive pregnancy test. So I actually had a doctor's appointment scheduled for that morning to see my doctor and talk about moving forward because we weren't getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And I just finished my first round of a medicine that induces ovulation, and I thought maybe I should take a test because my period hadn't come, which was very normal, but I was like, maybe I should take a test just in case so I can for sure tell them I am not pregnant. And I saw a faint line, and I was very shocked, and Jonathan, my husband, was still sleeping, so I got ready, and then when he got up, I said, I think I'm pregnant. So I took another test, and we were both shocked, and I called my doctor and canceled that appointment for that morning and scheduled a new one.
Okay, yeah. A different type of appointment.
Yes, a different type.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because on commercials, that line seems so like, yes, it's positive, or no, it's not.
Yes.
And then when you actually take it, you're like, is that really positive?
It can be very faint.
Yeah, for sure. That's really exciting. I know from knowing your story that there was some unfortunate things happened, and the excitement was kind of killed early. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I made that appointment, and I think they scheduled it, I think it might have been for about 8 weeks. So I had to wait a bit, and about 2 weeks after the positive pregnancy test, I started spotting. So I called my doctor, and he ordered some lab work, and I went and got that done. I think it might have been a Wednesday or a Thursday, and that Friday morning I woke up with some bad pelvic pain, and so I called my doctor and some bleeding. So I called my doctor, and he ordered some more lab work, and so I went in and got labs done, and my HCG levels had gone down. So he called me back and had told me that we were miscarrying our baby. So that was all that happened, and just he kind of told me to give it time and warned me of complications and what to call him back for.
Okay, so you did lab work, but there was no like ultrasound or like did you see your doctor?
No, there was no follow-up. I had to make an appointment for, I think it was 2 weeks post.
Okay.
That day, yeah.
Okay. You were like kind of expecting the worst and like knowing what's happening. What did they tell you to expect to happen?
They just told me that there would be some bleeding and some blood clots possibly, and warned me if there was a certain amount of blood to call back, or if it didn't kind of start ending by this point, to call them back. Okay. And
for anyone that's not familiar with miscarriage, there's a few different ways that it can happen. So Shaylee, in her instance, it kind of like naturally they were just going to let like the bleeding happen and it should resolve itself. Sometimes they give you medications to like help that process along, and then sometimes you actually have to go in for a procedure for them to like get everything out. So there's a few different ways miscarriage can happen, and I think a lot of it depends on like how far along you are and stuff. So then you were waiting, and just I'm sure that was really like sad and upsetting. What were like some of your emotions, or like how'd you feel during that time?
I was obviously very sad and grieving in that moment. I think that I held a lot of anger inside as well, because it felt like I had waited 2 years to get pregnant, got that positive test, and then it was taken away from me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So then a couple of weeks go by. What happened from there?
Yeah, so about 3 weeks later, I started having a little bit of shoulder tip pain, just right in the top of my shoulder, and some more cramping like feeling and an increase in bleeding. And I wasn't really sure what was going on, but it kind of came and go for like a weekend. So I kind of put it off, and then early on one week, it was very intense, and I woke up at about 4 a.m. that morning and went to the bathroom, and I had a lot of bleeding. So I knew something was wrong. So I called my doctor that morning. He was actually on call, so I had to talk to the doctor on call, and he said, it is probably your first period post-miscarriage. They can be intense and painful, so just give it a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So I was sitting at home, and I was getting even more miserable as time went by. So I called again, and I told them my symptoms, and I said, I think something's wrong. I can't just wait it out. And they thought about it for a little while, and they told me to go to the ER. So I went to the ER that afternoon, and they did blood work and an exam and an ultrasound.
Okay.
And they found that I still had something in my fallopian tube, and so they told me I had an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the baby gets stuck in your fallopian tube or elsewhere, and they rushed me to surgery because I was internally bleeding.
Oh gosh.
That's where all the shoulder tip pain came from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points of that. You have to sometimes follow your intuition more than anything else. For sure, healthcare providers are doing their best based on all the cases that they see.
Yes.
And, you know, especially if it's like someone you're not super familiar with, like they don't know if you're someone that calls about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Or, you know, you only call when it's serious. So I think it's awesome and like a really good point. If you feel like something is not right,
yes,
like follow up on that and make sure and be like, I just don't feel like it is, because worst case scenario, you know, you go get it checked out and they're like, yeah, this is normal. But if you've never been through that before, like who would know what normal is?
Sometimes it was hard for me to advocate for myself in that moment, because I like to trust the people who are very smart and this is their profession, but to know that I was so miserable, I needed something else.
Yeah, and good thing you went in, because it actually
proved to be good.
Yeah, ectopic pregnancy is very serious, obviously, internal bleeding. And so from there, obviously I'm sure like your emotions in that moment were just like very shocked and like what is going on. And then like moving forward from there, what were like the next events that happened, I guess?
I took a couple months to heal, let my body heal. The next steps were I waited till my cycle started again, and my doctor gave me the opportunity to take some time off from medicine, or he was willing to let me get back into it. So we had those decisions to make.
Yeah. Now, tell me a little bit about, like, for ectopic pregnancy, what do they actually do to, like, get everything stabilized again?
I actually had my entire right fallopian tube taken out in surgery, so my body definitely adjusted to, like, missing a part of it. But it really just takes some time to let your body heal and figure things out. Yeah. I didn't have to do anything special or different.
Okay. Is removing a fallopian tube, is that normal with ectopic pregnancy? Is that common?
It can be. He told me before surgery, he said, depending on how the tube looks will matter, like, whether they take it out or not.
Okay.
So I had a cyst taken off of the end of my tube in my ovary, and he said there was some scarring on my tube, and so that could have been what the baby got caught on, or just it was just very damaged from weeks of it being stuck in there.
Gotcha.
So.
That's kind of nice, I guess, that you knew at least going into surgery. It wasn't like you went in and then came out and they were like, oh, we removed part of your body.
Right.
You didn't know that was an option, so that's good, I guess.
Yes.
Moving forward with trying to get pregnant again, how did that affect the chances, or, like, what do outcomes look like for people after they've had a fallopian tube removed?
They had told me that it doesn't affect my chances of getting pregnant too much. Like, if my right ovary releases an egg, my left fallopian tube can actually reach over and grab it, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. I did not know that.
Our bodies are amazing. So it obviously lowers the chances a little bit, because it doesn't always happen, but it didn't, like, ruin my chances completely.
Right. So they pretty much said, like, don't be too concerned.
Yes.
Like, I mean, obviously you know that fertility is just more difficult for you for whatever reason anyways, but it shouldn't, like, lower it, or you don't have to. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Shaylee, you're still on this journey of trying to get pregnant.
Yes.
And for anyone else that's on this journey, what, like, piece of advice there's two different people I want you to speak to here.
Okay.
Someone that's had an ectopic pregnancy, maybe it's a little bit newer for them, or they just found out and they're, Googling like crazy to, like, figure out what's going on. Like, what would be your piece of advice for them? And then just someone that's on a fertility journey in general. What question or what advice would you have for them?
Someone who may have just had an ectopic pregnancy, I think that I would say continue to follow your intuition on how you're feeling. Advocate for yourself, like we were talking about just a little bit ago. And also give yourself a lot of grace. I think that I kind of breezed over everything that happened just because I didn't have an ultrasound to look at. I didn't get a hold of my baby, but I still held a lot of that grief, and I did not take care of it right away. And so I would recommend to see a counselor if that feels right for you. I'm still seeing one, and I love it. It's very good for me. And just to be honest with yourself and your spouse and your friends on how you're feeling, if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. That's really great.
So,
and then what about, is there anything just for someone on a fertility journey that's not going as expected, it's taking longer than they thought? Is there anything that's helped you? I know you guys don't know Shaylee, but I do, and she's been very, like, positive and optimistic, and I'm sure sometimes you're talking yourself into those emotions, and like you said, it's important to acknowledge those not so happy emotions too, but there's definitely, like, a balance of that, and I know you've been very positive, and so how did you come to that place, and, like, what encouragement could you offer to other people?
I think coming to that place is, like you said, a little bit of a cover-up sometimes, and I also think it's a little bit of a choice. I just didn't want to spend every day sitting in this grief or sitting in this woe is me, and so I chose to just still enjoy life and have fun with my friends and enjoy these years with my husband and things like that. I think that letting yourself still be happy during this journey, even though a lot of days are hard, keeps you going.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
It's not always easy, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there is just a lot. a lot to process through that whole process. And I think that it's something that not a lot of people talk about. And so it seems like everyone around you is getting pregnant, like without any problems at all. And so it can feel very like lonely and isolating, and then hard to know like who to talk about it with, I think. So I'm really glad you're sharing this. And if there's anyone out there that wants to share their story, you are welcome to put it in the comments, and we would love to like be a part of that journey for you as well. And then one last thing is that when you start dealing with infertility, there are like so many avenues that you can go to seek out treatment. You can just like wait on it. You can work with your OBGYN or your midwife. You can seek out fertility specialists, or some people really target nutrition. Some people target medications. There's a lot of different ways to go. So in your 3 years, what things have you tried? I know you mentioned just inducing your periods. Is there anything else that you've tried, or where are you at right now?
So I worked with just my family practice doctor for a little bit to try to get my periods regular, and then I worked with the OBGYN that has done both my surgeries for a while, and now I am just starting to meet with the fertility clinic. And within that, there's so many options. So I feel like I'm just at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just good to kind of know like what you can pursue, and there's different people that have different specialties. So very cool. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to share? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shaylee, for being willing to share. Like I said, I know that there's just a lot of people that basically like Googling and finding these stories is kind of the only place that they can find community and hope and encouragement. And definitely not every journey is the same, but I think sometimes there's comfort in knowing that I'm not the only one that is going through something like this, and I can survive this. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
So for everyone else, thanks so much for watching today. I will see you all in the next video.